All right, guys, it's time again for another Mayday Monday. It is the first Monday of September, Labor Day weekend. We made it through the summer. Most of us, I guess. There's still some summer left out there somewhere. But I hope everyone's doing well right now. While we're filming this thing, the Hurricane Ida is tropical storm Ida is making its way through Louisiana, Tennessee, and so on, and it's coming up. It's coming up to my area here in Northern Virginia. But I hope everybody was able to weather that, and if you haven't, you're getting the help and stuff that you need for that. Real quick, since last time we spoke, we went to FDIC. FDIC was in Indianapolis. It was summer school in Indianapolis. It was a great week to see some old friends, make some new friends. It was hot in Indianapolis, not like the typical April FDIC, but I think it was good. It was worthwhile, and I can't wait till April comes around. Before we get started, but like we have in the past year, we're going to just kind of mention those firefighters who we lost in the line of duty since the last time we were together. There was a fire apparatus operator in Stanton, Texas, who was died in a vehicle accident. Mississippi firefighter suffered a medical emergency while operating at the pump panel. North Carolina firefighter was killed in a vehicle collision on his way to the firehouse. A Maryland captain killed in a basement fire. That was if you guys have not checked that out, look for the incident involving Captain Laird from the Frederick County, Maryland. Connecticut firefighter suffered a medical emergency on the scene of a structure fire. A Georgia deputy chief died from COVID. A Kansas firefighter was electrocuted while he was searching for victims of a vehicle crash. A volunteer firefighter from North Carolina died from COVID. A Georgia firefighter died from COVID. It was a Texas firefighter was found dead of an apparent cardiac event at the firehouse. A Florida lieutenant died from COVID. A wildland firefighter was struck and killed by a falling tree, and that was in Oregon. A volunteer firefighter from New York was struck and killed by a fire department vehicle. I think that's the second time, maybe more, that we've seen that this summer. Third time. Lieutenant from New Jersey suffered a medical emergency while responding to a hazmat. Listen, that's 14 fire service members that died in the line of duty in August. And it was a really tough month. The numbers are high again. So again, just stay aware, keep your firefighter survival ears up, and stay safe out there. Speaking of August, I hope you got to look at the Mayday Monday we did, remembering Lieutenant McCarthy and firefighter Kroom from Buffalo Fire Department. That anniversary of that was just the other day, I think, again, the 24th of August. Last month, we talked to former Commissioner Lombardo about those two members. He gave us some really good tips and techniques about how to survive the fire ground, basement fires in particular. Also, for the last month, the skill drill was reviewing basement fire rescue techniques using the rope, right? The 3 ends. If you haven't tried that, go give that a try. It's really efficient. It's really less equipment than a lot of other things, and it's easy to do. So go back and do that. Check that out. This month, hold on a second. I got to get my dog. This month we are talking to friends of ours from Delaware. Delaware, it's an interesting place, small, right? Small, and only a couple of counties. They're going to tell us some more about it, but we want to learn about these men and the women who were involved in this and honor their memory. With me today, Brad Speakman. We had Eric Caesar Haley and Jack Wilson. Jack and I met through ISFSI and other stuff in the fire service. We've kept in contact. I know I've been up there to see their operation in the training academy. They had me up to speak about basement fires when the ISFSI basement fire stuff came out. We've kept in touch. He's called me with some hey, will you review this Mayday incident? And we've kept a good friendship up there. So when the anniversary of this incident came about, which, by the way, this happened since we've been doing Mayday Mondays. So, it's kind of one of those ones that you already kind of keep in the back of your head. Also, we have friends who were involved in this. So when this came around, I knew who to call. Let me call Jack and see if he can help out and get us in touch with some people. So I think it was while I was on the way to Buffalo, to drop the kid off for school. I talked to him, and made the connection, and then he found some guys gracious enough to come on and talk about this, so that again, we can honor the memory of those who we lost, and also learn from what happened here. So Jack, I didn't get introduce you, but if you will, just kind of tell us who you are, and what you got to give for us today.
Sure. My name's Jack Wilson. I've been in the Delaware Fire Service. In February, I'll be 40 years. I started as a junior member in the Newcastle County, Wilmington Manor Fire Department. Rose to the rank of deputy chief there. I got on the Wilmington Fire Department in 1989. I was in the 27th Recruit Academy. All the guys I went on now are now retired. I retired in 2015 as a lieutenant in the special operations in the squad company. I was in almost my whole entire career in Heavy Rescue 1. Only there was about 3 or 4 years in the beginning where I was in an engine companies. I went to the rescue squad as a firefighter, and when I got promoted as a lieutenant, which is not unheard, we stayed in the same company as a lieutenant on the opposite shift on the Rescue 1. And they closed Rescue 1, and they made a squad company, and I stayed in Station 1 almost my entire career for 26 years, give or take a few first few. I moved to Seaford, Delaware in 2009, still in the fire departments, driving back and forth at a pretty 24/72 shifts at the time. I was a captain at Seaford. I'm currently the fire chief. I've been the fire chief for the last 4 years in Seaford, Delaware. Combination fire department, pretty hectic schedule going around there. My current job is with the Delaware State Fire School in Dover, Delaware. My office is in Dover. We have 3 academy sites in each county. I'm currently in Delaware. I'm in charge of the rescue programs. It includes RIT and Mayday and stuff like that. Just prior to the incident we're going to talk about, we started a statewide Mayday committee, which Caesar was a part of that also, to develop a Mayday policy statewide. We're probably the only state in the United States that has a statewide Mayday policy. It may vary from county to county a little bit because of tactical or strategic procedures, but if any of our companies cross lines, the procedures with the 911 centers are exactly the same. How we transmit on the radios, it's a full SOP. So we've taken them pretty crazy. But like I said, I wasn't there the night of the fire. That's why I went out and rounded up Brad and Caesar on this, because they both were directly involved with it. One time I retired, I was about a year I was off the job. So I was there the next morning with helping. I was there into the to the services, and stuff. So I'll let you them. If you want me to talk more a little bit about Delaware in a few minutes, we will. But
yeah, we'll talk about that. But I saw you were up in New York. Did you go up to Long Island?
I did. I went up to Seaford, New York, our sister city. Yeah, they had our drill in 6th Battalion parade with all the departments up there. It was a very neat situation. Everybody, our fire department, which is a sister fire department to them, been friends for a long time.
I went to Buffalo, and when I went to Buffalo, they had that competition, the fire, the little ladders and and the hose thing. And
that's a totally different culture, man. Culture
sure was.
And they also do that motorized drag racing trucks. They said they do like 75 miles an hour and do all that.
Yeah, that's what we watched. And my daughter was like, I'm in a whole different reality here, like a alternate universe or something.
Yeah, I definitely got an education in Long Island. They got racetracks and they're very into it. It was different. When I went, it was the New York State Championship. Yeah.
And they had a bunch of Long Island guys there. So we were only be able to stay there for about an hour. But yeah, it was wild.
Different.
So Brad, tell us a little bit about you.
Yes, my name's Brad Speakman. 23 years, give or take a year in the fire service. A bulk of that time, or all of that time, the 23 years was with Port Penn Volunteer Fire Department. I started about 17 years into that, or had about 17 years in the career service, mostly in Newcastle County, which was combination. Started off very small combination, in the county, and it's since grown exponentially. with the decrease in volunteering as it may be. Got hired in Wilmington in 2012, spent a little time on the sky boom down the Marine unit. Well, it's a sky boom unit, but it's dedicated also to help the Marine division itself. Transferred over to Engine 1, and up until the fire, was on Engine 1, always on C shift, a little bit in the beginning on B shift, but bulk of my time was on C shift. I've, throughout my career been involved in every aspect of special ops. Been involved heavy with the surface water team, where I was operations, high angle confined space team, helped out operations with that. Just anything I could get into. I loved the training aspect of it, and we were able to take advantage of going to a lot of it. So I was very fortunate throughout my career to be able to delve into everything I could.
Awesome. Thanks for coming today. And Caesar, I guess you're Eric, right? Eric, but you go by Caesar. Turn that music off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I go by Caesar. It was a nickname I was given 32 years ago when I joined the fire service. I joined the volunteer fire service. I had 32 years with the Claymont Fire Company. I served as chief for 9 years. Somebody remembered I worked at Little Caesar's Pizza in high school, and that's where the nickname started. And now if you say Eric Haley, 99 people out of 100 won't know who Eric Haley is, but they know who Caesar is.
Pizza.
Yeah, pizza. So, like I said, I've been a volunteer for 32 years in the fire service. Went to a lot of training. It's pretty much all I wanted to do. And then I was fortunate. I got hired by Christiana Fire Company. I worked for them for 8 years, from 94 to 2002, when I got picked up and hired by the city of Wilmington in the 32nd recruit class, which Chris Leach was also in. And, been very fortunate. I worked the rescue most of the time until I got promoted. And then I've been kind of floating around between engine companies and squad companies since then. I was recently, 3 years ago, I was promoted to captain, and I'm back at Station 1, the only place you want to be. As a matter of fact, 1C, Brad, staying on the C shift. Been very fortunate to go to a lot of training. I never wanted to be in a position where I didn't at least have some clue or direction to go, or, something to base my decisions off of. And real quick, funny story about the other two gentlemen on here. Brad, Jack, Brad's twin brother, Brandon, and several others of us took a RIT for structural collapse class at Firehouse Expo years ago, and it drove us really to the breaking point. Like, we're very, very good friends, and by lunchtime we didn't want to talk to each other. We were sitting eating separately, and after the class was over, we stopped at I just remember this, we stopped at a little store to get something to eat, and I believe Jack ordered a sandwich, and somebody yelled, "You don't need that, fatty." And the lady made a comment like, "Man, you guys really don't like each other." No, we like each other a lot. And I think I bring that up because training yourself to that point, I think, benefited all of us involved that night. Not just the people in this group, but other people involved that night. But I think that played a factor. So.
Absolutely. I can see, listening, researching this, absolutely, I can see where you guys are a tight-knit group there, right? Everybody kind of knows everybody, even the surrounding jurisdictions with the volunteers, because everybody's out doing that. So I'm sure, and looking at, right, like there were RITs that were put together with individual people at the scene, or rescue crews that went in. And I'm sure that was probably like a a natural, all right, us three will go in there. You guys work well together, and you knew kind of how each other were gonna do things, and you didn't have to necessarily say something, right? They knew. I could look at you and you knew what I wanted from you, or you knew what you were gonna get. So no, I think you guys are what little I know from being up there, Wilmington, and some of the guys. Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely see where your time into the training and the fact that each of you did it together, that really helped solidify things. So let's talk a little bit about, I got this PowerPoint here, this share my screen. Before we get too far, I want to go back and kind of review some things from last month. Again, this is last month's, guys. This is talking about the Buffalo fire, and we were doing the 3 ends. And Chief Lombardo, if you guys watch the podcast, he talked about a tip. One of the tips that he tells people when they're if they have a fire with a basement fire is put a folding ladder near the front door. Again, it's a something small. You don't have to. Doesn't take 2 people. One person can get it off the rig. The driver, while he's setting the pumps, he can go grab the ladder and set it in the front. That could pay dividends, right? And I think we've seen that in your incident. I know that they use the ladder, and then if you think about Captain Laird in Frederick, Maryland, listen to his audio. He calls for a ladder. So that's a good tip and something that we can carry forward from that. That's last month's. This is this month's. This month we're going to talk about some air management stuff and delve into that from the incident. So let's talk about Wilmington, Delaware, right? Wilmington, Delaware. Obviously, it's the largest city in Delaware, right?
Yes.
The largest city. And you guys only have 2 counties in Delaware?
3 counties.
3 counties.
Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was like not very many, but 3 counties. Are they all about the same size?
No, Sussex is the largest county. Newcastle is actually, by land mass, is the smallest, but the most population. Kent County is like more agriculture. That Dover's the largest city there, and then you got Sussex County, which is a pretty geographically large county. The population's grown, but Newcastle County by far is still the most populated, smaller county. You can probably get across Newcastle County without traffic in 35 minutes, if that.
And that's the northern. That's what Wilmington's around that.
Yep, Wilmington's probably about 35 minutes south of Philadelphia. So,
how far is Dover?
Probably from Wilmington, probably about 45 minutes.
45 from Wilmington.
And if you know the beach areas like Rehoboth or Dewey and stuff like that, it's probably about an hour from there.
All right. So as the city goes, I guess again it's only 71,000 people, but for that it's a pretty densely populated 71,000 people.
Certain areas are, yeah. The areas around Station 1, Engine 6, Station 4. A lot of Engine 2. It's a lot of urban areas. The downtown high-rise area, what's the things? There's mostly it's ghost town at night, but not daytime. It's pretty populated with businesses, and there used to be a lot of banking in there with the stuff. A lot of that's moved on, and there's still a lot of business. The tax base is why it brings a lot of businesses there to do it, because they get better tax rates. A lot of the corporations headquarters are in an office somewhere there.
So outside of downtown, is it mostly bedroom community and neighborhoods?
You do have some bedroom communities out there. Outside the city it becomes more suburban, but the inside is a lot of row homes, a lot of multifamily dwellings, stuff like that. So a lot of the dense urban areas, and you get out towards 40 acres or towards the Little Italy areas, are out towards the 9th Ward, where it gets a little bit more, then you get a little more bedroom communities and stuff like that. So
when I was researching it, I saw all these little neighborhood names, right? The Flats. Where's that? Is that close to the downtown area?
It's actually the Flats. It's closer to Engine 6's area. So it's if I'm correct, it's Flats that are off of Union Street. So, and the
40 acres.
Good.
40 acres sounds like the size of the city, but where's that?
40 acres is a nice area. It's probably one of the nicer areas of the city. It's where Engine 5 is located. Their station's located at 40 acres. It's at the I'm going to say that's on the northwest side of the city. So that's a really nice area.
And Happy Valley, there's a valley in that 17 square miles?
That's what they call it. It's just, I don't know if they're happy or not, but
And you do have a Little Italy, like an Italian enclave of people in
Right.
Wilmington?
We do. We used to have we had a Polish area like in Browntown and Italian area. It's out around Lincoln Street and Union Street out that way. A lot of really good Italian restaurants out that way. So they're really like Mrs. Was it Mama Romano's or something like that? Is that the name of that place there? It's been a long time since I've been up there. So
Mrs. Rubino's. Don't
Mrs.
mess it up.
Rubino's, yeah, Mama Romano's, yeah, Mrs. Rubino's. I'm sorry. Thanks, man. Caesar, you probably eating there, huh?
I would think so. We got to. We have to try the places out.
Yeah.
So Wilmington, you said like 30 miles south of Philly?
It's probably about 35 minutes. It's probably about, I would say probably somewhere in that thing, probably
25 miles.
about 20 miles. We're all Eagles fans there.
Yeah, you had to bring that up.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about the fire department. That's your fire chief there?
That is Chief John Looney, yes.
And he was internal guy. Did he go up through the ranks?
You did. John came on did he come on with Caesar the class after?
No, John Looney was class of 1993.
93. John came on. John spent a lot of time in the heavy rescue with myself, and he was my partner for a long time. John and I made a firefighter rescue one time. John's a great guy. He went out through the ranks. Lieutenant. He was in the fire marshal's office, administration. He went to safety and training for a while. He went back out in the companies and the busy stations, and always wanted to be around with good firefighters and good people.
So you got 4 shifts. You're working the 24/72.
Not now. They can talk more about that.
No, we were that night. We're now on 24/48.
Oh, okay. So you're down to 3 shifts.
Yes.
Was that budget thing? Is that what happened with that?
Politics.
Yeah, politics and a budget.
I got you, because I know that this night they were doing some brownouts for companies.
Yes.
Yeah, we were still on 24/72 at the time. We were short-staffed at the time. We were under our minimum number. And for budgetary constraints, they were doing rolling bypass.
I see. So then the budget got tough, so they had to cut a shift. Is that what happened? When you went to 24/48?
It's such a sensitive subject here.
I got
but
you.
The contract negotiations, the city wanted that shift, and that's what we ended up. We're still in bonding interest arbitration, all kinds of those things, but we are on 24/48 with a Kelly day every 7.
I got you. Okay. So how many firehouses are there? 6 firehouses?
6 in a Marine station. Yeah.
The Marine station, is that you said that's like a dual staffed by an engine?
It's staffed by Engine Company 2 in Southbridge. The Southbridge station mans it. When there's emergencies, they have a couple of small rescue boats, and they have a larger, was that 9,000 gallon or per minute boat or something down there. I keep forgetting they have a boat sometimes, but there's a big fireboat down there. Good bunch of guys running it. Pretty good with that stuff.
But they do both engine, and then they go get the boat out if they have to.
Yep.
You kept saying heavy rescue. Is that still there?
The heavy rescue was taken out of service. That's a sore subject on my part, but it was taken out of service for budget restraints. Since I got on 1989, we lost a ladder company and a rescue company. Just prior for me getting on 1989, they lost an engine. They had 7 engines, 3 ladders, and all this. And throughout the years, they brought ambulances in. They took them out. They brought them. I mean, all because of budgetary stuff. But like I said, their heavy rescue is no longer there. They made 2 squad companies, and then after a certain period of time, they went to 1 squad company, and then it does dual role because it has a very busy fire district also.
4.
Squad.
So squad 4 is your heavy rescue unit.
It's a pumper rescue, yeah, like an engine rescue.
Staff with 5 people.
I don't know what it's staff with now. It was.
Yeah, it's 4. At that time, it was 5.
So now it's
the night of the fire, it was 4. Yeah.
And do they have like a tender truck with heavy rescue stuff on it, or is it all just on the engine?
Yeah, pretty much on the engine. There is a heavy rescue truck still there that they carry. I'm gonna say they probably still carry some of the stuff on it, but I don't know. So Caesar's is still stuff staffed on there.
Yeah, the old rescue is they call it Special Operations One now. It has the backup equipment or the extra equipment that we may need, but the day-to-day operational rescue needs, whether it's vehicle rescue, rope rescue, swift water rescue, is all carried on the squad company.
Yeah.
The squad's like a rescue engine. It's got some extra compartments and stuff.
Yes.
It's a bigger than the engines, regular engines they have.
So your ladder trucks, the 2 ladder trucks are tractor drawn aerials.
Yes.
And is that a minimum staffing is for every day?
Yeah, everything, the start of the shift in the morning and in the evening, because they divide the shift into 2 day and night, but it's 24-hour shift. Minimum staffing is 4 to start shift on every piece.
The battalion chiefs, do they have drivers, or is it just the chief by himself?
Just the chief by himself, both of them.
Yeah. I just lost that when I retired and I went to this rural place, and now I don't know where I'm going, so I'm trying to figure out where I'm going and drive really fast and not. Yeah, so I mean, again, those first world problems, right? So all right, so 3 shifts now, 3 shifts, and it's really the only fully paid department, right? There are some combination places.
Yeah, most of Delaware is going combination. You can't find too many volunteer stations now that don't have at least 2, 3, 4 people working. Some of them have up to 15 or 20 people full time now. But Wilmington is the only full career fire department in the state. Local, they're IFF local union fire department. Yes.
Christiana's got career guys too.
Christiana's probably them in Newark Fire Department. Etna, they probably have the most next in career staffing. They're providing a large area of the stated population, and they're probably between the both of them. They're probably running probably 25,000 EMS calls and probably like 8,000 fire rescue calls. Am I mistaken by saying that, Caesar? So they're pretty busy.
No, they're pretty busy. I had the numbers, but I don't have them.
What do they have? How many fire companies does Christiana have?
Station wise, they have 3.
Yeah,
Station at Newark has 3, I think now too. So, but they're running. The Newcastle County is running more like a career fire department system now because they have staff engines and staff ladders and rescues. They're on the boxes, and if they have to re-alert, they go to staff companies and stuff like that. So it's more, if Newcastle County was modeling more of a career system than it was in the past. So
you said Newcastle, Sussex, and what was the other one?
Kent County, which is the middle county.
Kent County. All right. So anything else about the Marine Division? They have a couple of boats, you said?
Yeah, they have a couple. I think there's a couple like water rescue boats, and they have the large fire boat.
Where are the ambulances?
Private.
Are they in the firehouse? I've read somewhere like they had some in the firehouse.
Yeah, it's a contract. They contract with St. Francis Hospital, which is one of the 2 hospitals within the city limits. They contract with them to provide BLS care. ALS care is provided by Newcastle County paramedics.
Third service, like a third service.
Yeah, they're like a third service. They the BLS within the past 2.5 years now, they've made arrangements for them to be in the firehouses instead of posting someplace or staging someplace. They have 6 in service 24 hours a day, BLS units. Sometimes they have a 7th, and they're stationed throughout the city at each one of the 6 firehouses. And if they have the 7th up, it runs out of the hospital.
I got you. Okay, so that's seems like it's pretty well underway. Got a good staffing, 4 people on a rig. That's good. Again, you have 6 engines and 2 trucks staffed every day. All right. At the time of the incident, it was a little different though. You had 24/72, and you had 5 guys on the squad 4.
That's correct.
Right. So let's talk about the members who were lost in this incident. We had Chris Leach, Artie Hope, and Jerry. Is that Jerry Fickus?
Yes.
Yes.
Jerry seems like he already had another career, right? Before he got into the, I guess he was volunteer, but why he went from like being a finance guy, an actuary, to a good government fire department job, huh?
Jerry was one of those guys, and in the station, he was just one of those great guys to be around. He was always a prankster. Um, my experience with Jerry as at Station One, especially when he came over and worked my shift, I worked his shift as a lieutenant in Squad One. He was always interested in what about everybody. I mean, family, friends, what we were eating, what kind of jokes, stories about other fire departments and stuff like that. But Jerry had a pretty good life going before he became a firefighter, and most of his stuff started back when he joined the Newark Fire Department and stuff like that. So he was getting into the fire service and really fell in love with what he did. He became a firefighter. He was just one of those guys you like to be around. He was a good firefighter, a really good firefighter that wanted to be there and trained and always interested and kept up on everything. And these guys could tell you more, but just my interactions with Jerry were just very professional. I still tell you to this day that Jerry had the book, trying to think of the name of what the firefighter that had the most saves in New York City or whatever at the time. What was that called? Caesar 10,000 alarms or something like that.
20,000 alarms.
20,000 alarms. And I got that book, and if you look online, that book's like you can't buy it for like $500 or something like that. But he had it, and I read the whole thing like 3 times, and I love it. It's just about Jerry, the things that we talked about and stuff. But he's also a very good family man and stuff like that. So. Good dude. And Jerry was, like I said, Jerry wasn't one of the, Brad, Artie, and Chris fell to the floor. Jerry wasn't one of those guys. Jerry was a part of the rescue. So, and Caesar and I will tell you more about that.
So he was Army. So that sets you up pretty well to get to firehouse life, right? But then the dealing with Ernst and Young, I mean, that's a pretty big name accounting firm. That had to be cutthroat too. So he definitely dealt with a lot of crazy firemen and then some cutthroat finance people.
He was an Army officer, wasn't he, Caesar?
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, almost possible. I thought he was an officer in the Army, but yeah, he was just very straight laced and good guy.
Yeah, Jerry was Jerry could be a very big prankster. If he wasn't sitting there training, which he loved doing all the time, or if he wasn't on a call where he was outrunning everybody, even at 51 years young, he was definitely trying to pull a prank on somebody. Don't leave the station and have him have to go to your station after you, because they would pull up to the different stations, and something's not going to be right when you get back. It's guaranteed. Funny story, like right before the fire, I had left my iPad by accident at the station. Now, I couldn't get into it, but you could get into the camera, and it had a fun time for like a half hour, and I still have those, and I'll definitely treasure those because that's who it was. His wife would say he's not that, and he was completely different at home than he was there. She was very shocked to hear how much of a prankster he was, and how outgoing he was. But just all around great guy.
Great. And unfortunately, my saint of a wife, Erin, could speak more to Jerry. She actually went to more fires with Jerry than I did. She's a volunteer in Newark with Jerry. But the one thing that I think Brad and Jack and anybody else you meet, Jerry could be the last one to the fire, but I guarantee you he is the dirtiest individual when he leaves the fire. He just had that knack. He always he was always in the middle. He always knew what to do, but he was just always there.
No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Jerry was on the squad that night, right? So they were on the box, and they had did they have a hose line engaged and then kind of turned into? Oh no, they operated as a search companies, right?
Yeah, they operated in the Charlie division. They were initially tasked with giving the Charlie side report. Battalion 1 was back there, but they still, performed as they were supposed to. And then we're in the midst of going into the exposure to check that when the collapse and subsequent Mayday happened, and switch gears to go in without a hose line through the Charlie side, which was obviously well involved with fire at that point. They found a way to get in, and did their best.
So the squad, as a second or third or later arriving, they would do search stuff, searching for occupants, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, the squad company typically operated as probably most people would consider it the rescue company. That's how they operated on the project.
Unless they were first due, then they would probably be an engine.
Yeah, if they were first due, they'd be an engine. That's a great point. Their first within their first due, they pull a first due, they would operate as the engine. If they were anything later arriving other than the first due, they would operate as you would expect a rescue company doing searches for victims, firefighter rescue if needed, or removal.
All right, now Chris Leach. Sorry, Jerry was private, right? Backstep guy. And Chris was a lieutenant at that time.
Yes.
Yes.
Again, it sounds like very active in Delaware Fire Service, right?
Very.
Yeah, I from what I hear, big into the rescue, big into tech rescue stuff.
Yep.
And then coming up, he was an Eagle Scout, got into the Tallyville Volunteer Fire Department. Is that where he started?
Yes.
Yes.
And then was actually working a trade that day, you say, with Engine 6 guys, but they were out of service. So he rode truck 2, ladder 2.
Correct.
Yep.
Chris. Yeah, Caesar and I are probably going to say the same exact things. Chris is probably, Caesar's, one of Caesar's best friends. He's one of my best friends. Greatly missed by both of us. I don't know if there's anything I can't tell you about Chris, but like even when I retired, he was coming down and see me in the fire academy like once a week to have lunch with me and just talk and stuff like that. He was, when I got hurt on the job, Chris, they asked me who should replace me, and Chris was I said Chris Leach is the one we need to move over to my guys, and because he's got it. He was in an engine company, and but Chris is just one of those guys that from the time I met Chris, it was just somebody I latched onto, and he's 15 years 10. I'm trying to not show my age here, but he's like 14 years younger than I am. But I became like so close to him and Caesar, and another guy on the job is now Battalion Chief Brandon Gregg. I mean, we went to classes nonstop. We were going to places like Virginia Beach and Texas A&M, and we just, them experiences with Chris and his knowledge of technical rescue and structure, especially in the structural collapse part of it, was second to none. He was just a good fireman and took the job very serious through education, college, and life and stuff like that. But I dearly miss him a lot. Just that, and Caesar and Brad will tell you the same thing. But he's the guy you count on. When we had softball tournaments, we went to PG County. Chris was the organizer. We went to other stuff like that, the PG County tournament or the Seaford softball tournament or anything that dealt with raising money for the union. Chris was always behind it. He was always the guy that you go to be there, and he was the life of the party. So, and I'll leave it at that. So,
well, that's why that exchange was, so he could go to the PG sophomore tournament.
Yeah,
Chris, I got this.
Actually, when I started, my first ever career job was at Tallyville Fire Company, and my first run was with Chris. So, and that was in 1999. He had just gotten off, I think he was working Claymont at that point. And he comes in, he's like, "Go kid, let's go." And, it was a
buddy boy, the buddy boy crew.
Yeah. That's it's like 6 a.m. I'm, first shift, I'm ready to go to sleep or something, who knows? And he's, ready to go. And, he was a great friend. I knew him, hung out with him quite often ever since then. And, he was just always great to be around.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, I reached out to another friend of everybody's here, Sid Polish, right? And I know Sid was tight with Chris as well, and he sent me this. He relayed this picture which kind of shows the Tallyville, right? That's where they were. Both
Yeah.
were Tallyville assistant chiefs.
Yep.
So that's, yeah.
You know, as great a fireman as Chris was, and I mean, we could sit here all day and tell stories about Chris and things he did and how funny he was and how great a fireman he was. You know, he was just as good a father to his three kids.
Three
He
kids.
had
How old are the kids now, you think?
Brendan's 21, Abby is 19, and Megan is 17. 17, just about. They're all just about 2 years apart. Maybe a hair off on one of their ages. I haven't turned that yet. But all are doing extremely well. As are Jerry's two boys. Both.
That's good stuff.
You know, all doing extremely well. And the one thing that I'll say about Chris, and I've heard this from more than one person, that, you know, he is the guy that when something went wrong, he always looked for. And I've heard people say, if it can happen to me, if it can happen to him, you know, what about me? And, you know, Chris, an old joke is, I'd follow Chris to hell with a garden hose. So, and he'd probably be giggling the whole way with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, but that's another story.
So he was another prankster too at times too. So I mean, there's things that he did that make you laugh. Yeah. So I just sit here just thinking about things that, you know, and, you know, just laughing in my mind, you know.
Brad, I can't remember whether you were involved with this or not, but when Chris, as I said, Chris was a prankster, but, you know, when he got promoted, they were doing something. They were going to play a practical joke, and they looked at him and he goes, whoa, I'm an officer. I can't be involved in that stuff anymore. However, I'm available for consulting purposes.
Or the time you put your phone in the candy machine.
Easy.
Yeah, I reached out to Sid. I said, Sid, do you have anything? He says, I do. Most of it's not G-rated, and he'd have to get back to me. So then we would discuss some more, and he says, I can tell you this. He was one of the best guys I've ever fought fire with. He could go anywhere and fit in with any crew, which I think everybody here on the call definitely said that as well. Yeah. So Chris was a tough loss for the Wilmington Fire Department and fire service in general, which just seems like when we do these Mayday Mondays, there's somebody involved that we could say that about every one of these incidents. So Artie Hope was riding Engine 5 that night. She was 48 years old, senior firefighter at the time. Apparently she was a track and field athlete, a pretty good athlete at Pitt. You went to the University of Pittsburgh. While she was fighting fire and doing her fire department stuff, she was also working to become a registered nurse. I think she had just gotten her license as an LPN and then was trying to get her RN. In addition, she was raising 3 girls, Ariel, Alexis, and Ardavia, with the husband, Bobby. So you guys did you guys work with Artie?
I did. I worked with Artie, I mean, on the same shift and stuff like that. Artie was always that sweet person, you know, and she'd come to work and, you know, she would give you your mind every once in a while, but she was in engine companies. She was the senior person of all 3 of them. She was actually, I believe, trying to talk about retiring very shortly, because she was going through the RN program. Very super sweet girl that you know, always had a great relationship with. Like I said, when we crossed paths, it was always pleasant. She brought her girls, and, you know, like, you know, stop by. We always made sure, you know, like family, we always make sure that all the kids and, you know, everybody, you know, we treat them whatever, know them, do whatever. But you know, she was working her way to retirement. She was at that point of her career where she was going to transition to probably be an RN. But in her early years, back when in high school days, because, you know, she was like a Delaware State, you know, track, you know, she had track records and stuff at her high school and stuff like that. She was very well known throughout that period of high school sports and stuff through Delaware. So when she came on, she was very she grew up, I believe she did grow up in the city of Wilmington, so there was a lot of people that knew who she was and stuff like that, just because of that period. But Artie, you know, like I said, she was at Engine 5 and she was the nozzle person that night. So on that crew, which was the second line in on the fire.
All right, let's talk about. I definitely did see like Artie was through Wilmington through and through, right? Grew up in Wilmington, back as a firefighter, and then wanted to give back as a nurse even. So
And
good.
you'll find out a lot with a lot of like I guess even though I was a city kid, but I grew up in county, and my my firefighter's kid. But there's a lot of people in our job that are just strictly city kids. They grew up in city through and through, and Artie was one of those people on our job that was one of those kids that got a job and spent a career at it and getting ready to move on.
Let's talk a little bit about the fire. So Lakeview Road. Did you guys know Lakeview Road pretty well? Was that a popular address for fires in Wilmington?
I don't know if it was a popular address for fires, but we went to a fair amount of runs in that area. Is called Canby Park Estates, and the houses are very similar, if not identical. And we went to a fair amount of runs there. There's been some fires in there over the years that guys have been to. We knew the layout of the area and the layout of the buildings.
Typical 2-story, middle of the group row house.
Yeah, it's typical. I mean, just to add in, I'm not going to add on the fire, but it's typical construction with many areas in the city of Wilmington. The row home construction, the basements, the garages on the rear, the seaside, limited vent points, stuff like that. Very small, tight, with two or three bedrooms with a bathroom on the second floor, depending on where it's at. So it's not something that the Wilmington firefighters don't encounter quite often.
Not pretty. I mean, these were like 70 years old, right? So they were pretty solid. So that's one thing you probably with a typical fire there was you had time to operate. So obviously something was out of the ordinary here with an early collapse like that. It had to be a set fire or something going on there that got to it. Again, because I worked in a city with lots of row homes like this that were pretty old, and you could feel pretty confident that you could operate in those places without a collapse. But
yeah, I think that. I'm sorry. Dang. I think there's a couple things involved here. You're exactly right. It was a set fire. The fire was set directly below where the initial collapse happened. They had partially removed the load-bearing wall to open up the basement for more room. Because initially, if these houses downstairs, the basement wasn't finished. It was more like a room, a heater room, and then like a garage. And they had opened up the wall to make it a bigger area. And there was a lot of, as we'll probably get into in the NIOSH report, there was a lot of dead load on the first floor. And instead of having plywood under the floor decking, I believe it was like lawan basically underneath the floor decking is my understanding. And I think that bared out in the report.
oh wow, I didn't dive that deep. I didn't realize that modification had been made, because I did see in the layout here that there was a big fish tank there, right? Which we know how much that's going to, or aquarium there, that's going to apply unexpected load. So this is a tough picture because it's got the smoke in there as well. But if you look again, pretty typical row house layout. What would you say, 20 by 40?
35. I think it's 35 by 14.
With again set up. This is your living area here. Back here was your dining room, and from the reconstruction, they said a large aquarium on a wooden stand in this area here, and then a horizontal freezer was in the kitchen area right there. So you said part of a wall was removed so they could open up the basement.
Yeah, there's where the steel beam runs across the center of the house, Bravo to David. There used to be a block wall there with the initial construction.
Wow. Yeah. And then the set fire. So apparently she was a disgruntled renter who set a fire in that lower level?
She was disgruntled with her mother. So she basically threw a temper tantrum and went down and set an old dollhouse on fire by throwing flammable liquids on it.
All right. So when the units got there, if you go back here, let me see. It was dispatched at just about at 3 o'clock, right? 3 o'clock, 2:56. 2:56. The ladder 2 was the first to arrive. 5 minutes later, that was what Lieutenant Leach was on ladder 2. He recognized it was a working fire and told communications to upgrade to get that 4th engine on the alarm. Shortly after his arrival came Battalion 2, Battalion 1, and Engine 5 all arrived on the scene. So Engine 6 and ladder 2 were housed together. Is that right?
Yes.
And 6 was out of service. 5's not too far away. They got there right after ladder 2 did. So ladder 2 and engine 5.
So ladder 2 arrived. When he calls for the 4th engine, he's actually going down. I only know this because I watched it on the CAD. I could see where he was. He gave the arrival from the main drag in. This street is one street off the main drag. So they come in the main drag, go down the bottom. If you're looking at the picture there, you're coming from left to right, come down around, and then come back up.
Okay.
And he gave heavy fire showing from the rear, asked for the 4th engine. We were about 3 blocks, Brad, when he gave that?
Yeah.
So we come into the development, followed basically the same path and lay out from the bottom, and engine 5 lays out from the top of the street. We were probably a minute and a half in front of engine 5.
Engine 1 was?
Yes, engine 1 was.
Okay, my fault. Then engine 1 got there right behind ladder 2. Correct. And ahead of engine 5.
Correct.
So within 4 minutes, engine 1, 5, and ladder 2 were at the A side of the building.
Correct.
Engine 1 and engine 5 were advancing attack lines, and ladder 2 was doing their ladder thing, going to go inside for search and help out, right?
Correct.
All right, good. So then we make entry here. And was there any fire on that first floor?
Yeah, that's ladder 2 is actually waiting. I mean, we're talking, seconds, but they were waiting for us to make a push in the first floor because at that point it had switched from, just fire from the rear to a heavy fire load coming out of the front from the first floor. So we needed to make a knock in there just to get them access to, get up to the second floor while the other parts of ladder 2 were throwing ladders.
Caesar and Brad, you guys were both on engine 1.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yes.
And the first line in the building was engine 1.
That's correct.
Yes.
And you guys, how far in were you? Like 10 feet?
Yeah, I think by the depiction on the picture there, it's pretty close to where we stopped after we knocked the bulk of the fire down. We were able to pretty quickly knock all the visible fire down and then needed to get through. The picture doesn't really show, it wasn't hoarding conditions per se, but it was very tight in there. So we needed to find a way to get around and get to the back of the structure and get to the basement. So Lieutenant Haley, well, Captain Haley now, we talked and said I needed to figure out how to get there. So as he discussed with Chris, I was able to hop around and figure out which way to go. And then got back to him and said we could make a push towards the back. So we're probably Caesar, like 10, 12 feet inside.
I don't even know if it was that far in all honesty. 10 feet's probably a good number.
Yeah.
So your goal was probably to go from the front door here over to this this opening in the wall to get to the dining room area?
That opening, that drawings, that it's not like it's depicted in there. It's a whole opening. If you could, it's typical row house.
Yeah.
You come in, you're in the living room, and then there's really no door. It's just a large
Right.
opening right into the dining room area.
Yep. I got you. I'm with you.
And actually, our conversation was, we got to make the basement, and the brief discussion about how to get there, and it's just like, go straight to the back wall. When you get there, hook a right, and we'll loop around into the kitchen and find those steps.
Yeah, that would have been tough though, huh? I mean, it definitely would have been. But you had enough people there. You probably could get some line in, make that turn. But that's going to be a tough turn to get down to that basement. But I'm sure you've done this before, though.
Yeah, luckily, Caesar and me had a discussion. I like to joke about it because I wasn't exactly the happiest. I was grabbing a different size line off of the engine, and he stopped me. And the street was so tight, I was having to stand on top of a car to get the line off. Just typical nighttime stuff in the small streets of Wilmington. And I pulled it off, and he said he wanted the 300 instead of the 200. So, I said some things to him and grabbed the 300, and, we moved on, which would have been, a great choice if we'd ever made it down there.
So you had 2-inch line, and you had two lines, but you had enough crew to get there. And you recognized early that the floor was feeling bad.
Yeah, once we tried to we were going to make that push towards the rear. I was a few feet far enough ahead that I immediately started to sense that the floor was getting spongy, which I knew that it felt more than spongy. It actually felt like it was already imminently collapsing. So I turned and, yelled to Caesar that everybody had to get out, because I knew the floor. I mean, it was a very distinct feeling that I knew it was going to all collapse very shortly. So this all happened within, 15, 20 seconds.
Did you see the residents outside? Were the occupants of the house out front?
No, the only occupants that I ever saw were next door neighbors, and they were sitting at the concrete wall ledge, like a retaining wall out front by the sidewalk. They're the only people that I ever talked to, but it was very briefly.
So you're thinking 3 o'clock in the morning, occupied row house.
Yeah.
There could still be people upstairs.
Yeah, that was what we were thinking.
Yeah, there was they did not put it out as trapped. They came back and said that initially everybody was reported out, but they thought somebody went back in for a dog. So they thought they were still inside. Then they came back, and the dispatchers actually said they thought at this point everybody was out. And one of the things that gets missed, unless you listen to a clear copy of the audio, Chris is very clear. He comes on the radio and he calls the chief and says, "We got a report of a subject trapped." I don't know where he got that. Chris is not foolish enough, or never was foolish enough, to believe everything everybody says, but in the manner in which I hear him say it, it must have been legitimate information that they had somebody trapped. That he came on the radio and said that.
Okay, so back to we're 10 feet in. You say that you looked around and you told Caesar, we got to get out.
Yeah, and at that point we had engine 1, engine 5, ladder 2, and part of squad 4 inside the front door, making their way to the second floor, and not quite there yet. So it was an immediate rush to get out the front door.
Yeah. So you guys had turned then. You guys made a decision to leave.
Yeah. Brad, when Brad said that, he said, "Caesar, the floor's soft." And, I'd say this, and like I said, this is happening in seconds. I start to say, I'm reaching for my radio. I'm starting to say to him, "Are you sure?" Because, we've all been in that position, but I didn't even get through the statement. You can feel the floor going. And I keyed my radio up, and we used digital 800, and I could not key up to get out. I got a dead tone. At which point I started screaming at the top of my lungs to get the F out. My radio, and at that point, we turned to leave. Brad has a hold of me, and we're going to leave. And at that point, I ran into Artie, Fives Nosman, who earlier we had taken her out earlier. We think, we'll never know, but we think her hood might have been open or something, because she said, she was burning initially when we went in. We had gone out to get that adjusted, and she had come back in. So I turned to leave. I'm yelling, get out, get in not nice terms. And we bumped into her, and I'll let Brad go from here.
Yeah, so we were going to be, we were right at the front door. I could see the concrete outside the front door, and at this point, the floor had collapsed completely in that area. So I was just holding on to Caesar at this point. And then, I made the decision not to pull him in with me. So I knew I was going to be going down, and I just, didn't want to bring him in with me. So I let go, knowing that, in my head, hoping that I could just land softly and, get through it. But I knew I was going to be going in that basement. So, and we went from there.
I jokingly say Brad just didn't want to get crushed by my fat ass. But when he let go, I actually felt like I was walking uphill. And when Brad let go, I actually got that burst forward and was able to spin around. And at that point, I'm standing bolt upright in the door, trying to grab Artie. At which point the other three people in the building, well, at least two, Joe Ryan and Vinny from the squad, dove out the door. And the next thing I knew, I was outside. And the only thing I can come up with is those two dove, when they all went to dive out the door, they hit me along with Lieutenant Cartwright and drove me outside. And I lost Artie when that happened.
So we're talking, the hole was 2 or 3 feet from the front door.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could almost touch the concrete out front. And the windowsill, I tried to grab that as well, along with Caesar, but there was also a couch right there that was dragging me down. There was a lot going on at once, because it was such a quick collapse and like a pancake collapse. So it kind of just, anything that didn't go in that section of immediate collapse was now dragging other things into it. So, it just was a bad scenario that was getting worse.
So we're thinking, they think that the disgruntled occupant set a dollhouse on fire, and it had to be in that AD quadrant of the basement.
AB quadrant in the basement. It's basically, if you're looking at that picture that's up right now, where it basically shows engine 5, engine 1, and myself, that general area is where it was, right below us.
So right in the D quadrant, then, right in front, right in the front door, really.
Mm.
Yeah, right in front.
Yeah. All right, so you guys made it in. Now the hole opens up. Brad, you fell into the hole, and Artie fell in.
Yes.
Anybody else fall into the basement?
Yeah, Chris Leach fell in at the same time. He fell at where the depiction shows the ladder 2 officer. They think he fell right generally in that area there, which would have been at the end of it, underneath of the stairwell. If I'm not mistaken, correct, Caesar?
That's 1B. 1B is you, 5B is Artie, and then L2 officer is Chris.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So you three are in the basement. Was it full of fire?
Yeah. So when the initial collapse happened, I think there was a small gap of where just the collapse itself kind of hesitated to fire, and then what I was told afterwards through the investigation was that after it became well involved again, the fire flow path came through where me and Artie were, which explains why we, took the brunt force of like fire exposure. It went through us and then out the front door. So they were able to just tell that through the investigation. They were able to tell the fire flow. So we were almost immediately involved with fire. Artie was probably 2 feet away from me the whole time. I know the NIOSH report says I walked over to her, but that wasn't true. We were both trapped next to each other. So a lot closer than, what was told. And yes, until a line was put in service, we were, directly involved in fire the whole time.
So when you fell, the line didn't come with you.
The line was displaced to something, when we were trying to get out, I wasn't really thinking about grabbing the line and dragging it outside with me. So I dropped it where it was. I don't know where that line, they ended up pulling that line back out. So I wouldn't have been able to tell you where it landed anyway. They ended up utilizing that line right after. So I was displaced, would have been several feet away from it anyway. And I was stuck under multiple things of debris, less than what Artie was, but.
You were conscious and alert.
Yes. Like I said, since we were involved in fire right away, I kind of initially felt the burn, and I lost almost all use of both my hands immediately because just the volume of fire was burning through pretty quickly. So, I knew what was going on wasn't the greatest situation. So I was able to actually, after feeling the initial burn on my hands and then knowing that the situation was bad, I was able to tuck myself into a ball. I consciously knew that my face mask was going to be the first thing to go, and I didn't want to lose any airflow. So I utilized just tucking myself as close together as possible to try and protect my hand, and my helmet ended up taking a brunt of that force from the direct fire. So I was pretty lucky in that aspect. And my mask held up the whole time. I'd like to think hopefully that was just because of those, actions right there.
All right. So who got you out?
So after they knocked the fire down, I was able to clear some of the debris off and get closer to the front of the house, which, I say closer to the front of the house. This place felt like it was a warehouse that night, but we're talking just several feet. You never realize, how short a place is till you see it afterwards. I was able to get to the bottom of where the front door used to be. At least that's what I believe so, and that's what I was told. Firefighter Jay Craig and Firefighter Denizio of Squad 4 were right there. And they were able to, I said they lifted me up from all the way from the basement. They said I helped myself out a little bit and got on the ladder a little bit, and then they pulled me out. So they were able to grab my pack, pull me up, get me out.
So they had a 14-foot roof ladder that they put down in that hole?
Yeah, Kevin Weems, the driver of now Lieutenant Weems, he was the driver on engine one and immediately recognized what was going on and went and grabbed a ladder for them to throw down.
Yeah, I could, that was on Kevin's part, Kevin Weems's part. That was an extremely heads up move. Everything going on outside before anybody up front could, as we're starting to flow water. You turn around to ask for a ladder, and he's already got it off the truck and running up the street, with this collapsible attic ladder. It was a really heads-up move on his part.
Yeah.
All right, so we missed it. Was there any Maydays yet?
So, as I stated, the we couldn't key the radio up. When I ended up outside, I tried to key my radio again. Couldn't key it up again. For whatever reason, I stood up and I yelled at the battalion chief, who clearly knew something had gone wrong, because it went from looking like, the fire's knocked down on the first floor to it's fully involved again. And he came up, and we gave him the information that, transmit to Mayday, we're missing members. And he transmitted to Mayday. There is what I believe to be Chris calling a Mayday. It's very quick. It's clear, but it's very quick. But the Mayday is already being announced by the dispatch center at that point.
Okay, so we have you looked at the chief, he recognized it, calls a Mayday. We think
Correct.
Chris gave something out, but at any rate, communications, the dispatch center recognized it, and they started their procedures for the Mayday, right?
Yeah, they as soon as
We got
as soon as the battalion chief announced the Mayday, they hit the correct alert tone, announced the Mayday, and asked for radio silence. And then the dispatcher proceeded to contact the chief to find out exactly who we were missing.
so we got there at 3:01. The collapse was at what, 3:09?
No, I didn't think it was that late. I think it was like 3:04, 3:05. It was minutes.
It was definitely just right after you got in the building.
Correct.
Right. So you get in the building, the Mayday's gone out. By now, the ladder's coming over. We get Brad out, right? What happened? Did somebody go down in there to try and find Artie?
So at this point, the RIT, which was engine 2 or SB2, had been dispatched but was not on scene yet. So it was kind of like you had described earlier, when we were talking, kind of like guys divided up to try to get moving. So right after the Mayday's been transmitted, we're trying to get back in. As Brad said, Lieutenant Tyson and his squad pulled the handline back to him, started playing it in the doorway, trying to knock the fire down. Kevin Weems brings up the roof ladder. We try to get down, and we didn't have the ability at that moment to get down in there. I made the decision, myself and the hydrantman from 5, firefighter Greco. We went through the Delta exposure to get to the rear, thinking that was the best access. I was trying to get to Brad at that point. There is just prior to that, there's a radio transmission. The dispatcher will ask the battalion chief who's missing, and I'll actually answer it. And the weird part is I don't remember saying 3/4 of the transmission. The initial transmission is, when the floor let loose, we were just inside, and I'm missing my Nozzleman and Speakman. And then I tell him that we're missing 5's Nozzleman and ladder 2 officer. I do not remember saying it, and I do not remember physically looking or asking anybody, hey, who are we missing or anything. I don't know if my brain was just guessing or what happened, but that's how that information came out. And then, like I said, myself and firefighter Greco went to the rear. In the front is, at this point, Lieutenant Tyson, firefighter Jake Craig, and firefighter Vinny Denizio, who's out front, and firefighter Weems, who was driving me, and firefighter Roberts from engine 1. So it's kind of like everybody's kind of like putting together teams to try to get stuff done.
So you got those people were from 5, and some of squad 4 are in the front.
Yep.
And they're putting together. You said that about this time, you guys go to the rear. You and Greco
and I went to the rear through the Delta exposure.
And then the ladder comes over to get Brad out.
Yeah, it was yes.
And you said it was too tough to get down into the hole at that point.
There was still fire coming out. The front door was fully involved. Tyson was actually laying on the front steps, playing the handline in the door, trying to knock the fire down.
And then the fire, when they got a little bit of the fire knocked down, then someone goes into the hole.
Yes. Once they get Brad out, like I said, I'm going on what I've been told and people I've talked to. They once Brad's able to help himself, and with the help of Vinny and Jake are able to get Brad out. At which point Vinny went back down the ladder toward Artie was my understanding. Like I said, I had gone to the back at this point.
So we know Artie and Chris are in the basement or have gone down. Who's in the rear? That was when two of the squad 4 guys had gone to the rear, and then you and Greco get to the rear?
Yeah, myself and Greco went to the rear. Artie in the rear is Battalion 1, and Jerry Fickus and Terry Tate, who were the 2 squad guys in the rear, had gone into I gotta think about it, Bravo exposure, and we're on checking for extension and doing a search when the Mayday went out. Then they came back out and made the push into the basement after the Mayday was transmitted without a handline.
In that fully involved basement.
Yeah.
Wow. So we got those 2 guys trying to make a push into the basement, and somebody goes in from the ladder to get to Artie as well, right?
Yeah. Vinny Denizio, or Lieutenant Denizio now, went down the ladder to Artie.
When did the off-duty guy come in? I read there was an off-duty guy who showed up and he was helping with some of the rescue.
It was short. It was a few minutes after all this. It's probably 4 or 5 minutes, but Nick DeVista showed up off duty, did report into the incident commander. It's not like he was out off freelance, and I do want to make that point. But he reported in and ended up down with Vinny down in the basement trying to free Artie.
All right, so Vinny goes down the ladder.
Correct.
And gets a hold or finds Artie.
Yes.
And was able to get her over to the ladder?
No. It was an extended period. She was tangled in the debris. As Brad said, if you pull that drawing back up, really, I really want readers to really take a deep dive and look at that picture and look at how much furniture and how much stuff was on that first floor. Everything on that first floor ended up in that hole on top of Brad and Artie. I mean, you have a sectional couch. You have at least 3 refrigerators on that floor, a 50-inch TV, an aquarium, a rocking chair. There is a lot of stuff. It's kind of deceiving to look at the picture and, imagine packing all that into half a row house, in the front half of the row house. All that stuff on top of what was already in the basement.
And fire. Okay, so Artie is, she's alive, and from again reading the NIOSH report, it sounds like they're able to communicate with her to try and get her over to the ladder. It's not that simple.
It's not that simple. My understanding was she was extremely tangled in debris. To the point they made the decision at some point, she had lost her mask in the fall and was out of air at that point. And they made the decision to actually cut her pack away from her because it was so tangled in debris, they couldn't get it untangled. And she had already lost her mask in the fall. So at that point, they made that decision. I believe they moved her towards the ladder, at which point those that were with her at that point ran out of air. They were like bone out of air and scooted up the ladder to get, new air. At which point, how she was conscious and still able to move around is just beyond me. But she crawled away from the ladder and started, I guess, crawling toward the back.
All right, so now we have crews coming from the rear.
Yeah, and this is all kind of happening all at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and unfortunately, we don't have a good timeline for some of this. So while all this is going on in the front, getting Brad out and everything, Jerry and Terry made the push in from the rear because of the amount of debris and the way the basement was laid out. So the rear of the building, if you're facing the rear of the building, you have a large opening, which they had turned into a slider. Originally, it was a garage door, and there's a man door to the left. So the picture's reversed. So if you're facing the Charlie side, like basically where you see that picture says countertop on the right of this picture, yeah, directly below that is a man door to like a heater room walkway area. And to the left of that is an opening that's a sliding glass door that had failed. Jerry and Terry went in the sliding glass door, as I understand it from talking to Terry, and they searched off to the left because of some debris that was laying down there, and ended up finding Lieutenant Leach laying basically where Brad had said, basically underneath where he's standing right there in that picture. So at the base of the basement steps, underneath the landing to go to the second floor, on the first floor to go to the second floor, if that makes sense to everybody.
Okay, so then they concentrated their efforts on getting him out, or a
Yes.
crew did?
It was Jerry and Terry. They were the only two in there at this point. That is probably going on at the same time that Vinny and Jake are trying to get Brad out the front door, or are getting Brad out the front door. Chris is conscious, and they begin to drag Chris back the way they came, back toward the door the way they came. They were just shy of the door, feet shy of the door, when Terry, who was dragging him, Jerry's driving him. My understanding is Terry tripped or fell backwards, and Chris ends up in his lap. So anybody who has drug a firefighter in that position can attribute that. You fall backwards and you end up pulling them on top of you. At that point, firefighter Grieco had gotten to the back. We've had a collapse in the front. We have not had a collapse in the back yet. As I understand it, Jerry, or a kind of assumption and understanding of what was going on, it sounds like Jerry swung off the feet to try to help get Chris off of Jerry. Grieco comes in and grabs Terry, trying to get him up from underneath Chris. At which point, the back half of the first floor collapses, and basically cantilevers off the back wall. And when it cantilevers off the back wall, it pushes Terry Tate and Grieco back out the door. And then Chris is buried by the debris, and Jerry is partially as well, but we believe that Jerry was struck by one of the 3 refrigerators that were on that first floor when they fell into the basement. Because if you look at the drawing, there are 3 refrigerators on the first floor. One's in the kitchen, one's in the dining room, and one's actually in the living room.
So you say that Terry had a hold of Chris.
He had a hold of my understanding is he had a hold of his SCBA straps.
And he fell back onto, at this point, Chris is on top of Terry. Jerry gets up and comes around. Grieco sees all this. Then the collapse occurs.
Correct.
Wow. So this is the back half. So going on in the front half is still Artie and whoever came down through the ladders trying to get get control of her.
Correct.
Yeah, firefighter Roberts, firefighter Denizio, and
Jake or Nick.
Nick DeVista, firefighter DeVista, were down in the basement with Artie.
Then they came down the ladder. They came down from the front.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's worthwhile to say here, depending on who you speak to about this, it depends. Their perspective depends on where they were for this fire. A couple of us have called this a tale of two fires, because if you were in the front, you have a perspective. If you were in the rear, you have a totally different perspective, because there were rescue operations going on at both locations simultaneously with varying, stuff is just, it's gone from bad to worse. You've had one collapse in the front, now you have a second collapse in the rear.
And the fire, no one's really got a handle on the fire yet either.
No.
So all that stuff that's on the first floor is in the basement and it's catching on fire, and now it's on top of Chris and Jerry in the rear.
Yeah.
At this point, they're able to get Chris out relatively quick, or there was a long rescue operation to get him.
No, Chris, by all accounts, or not by all accounts, but people there wasn't found till later in the operation. Time-wise, I don't know the exact time, but other stuff had happened up until that point. He was buried, and they weren't really aware of where, and they knew where, the general area, but it was just so much debris.
All right, so that's it. They got Jerry. Jerry was close to the back.
So Jerry's when the second collapse happens, I did not see the second collapse. I was out in the alleyway getting water. At this point, the Ellesmere Fire Company, which is a volunteer fire company that borders the city of Wilmington, the firehouse is less than a mile and a half from this incident. They had a crew in station, and they made the response, and played a huge effort and a key effort in this. They are on scene at this point. They are on scene either as the second collapse happens or just prior. We're able to get a hand line off of their rig, start knocking the fire down, and several of their members, along with several of us, were able to get around the doorway. The sliding glass doorway was basically blocked initially by 2 or 3 bays worth of joists and floor decking that was on fire that we were able to knock down and then push inside. At which point Jerry Fickus was found unconscious against the Bravo wall, close to the Charlie side, and was removed to the exterior of the building in cardiac arrest. EMS took over patient care with him, and the search continued for the missing members. I was trying to search I was looking for Brad, because at this point I still think he's in the building. I don't know that he has gone out the front. All of the debris, you're crawling over piles of debris. You're crawling over TVs, tables, everything that was, on that first floor is now in the basement, along with the basement stuff. And, as I pointed out earlier, there's 3 refrigerators. They actually ended up dividing the house basically in half because they were laying on each other and in different positions along with that freezer. So,
all right. So on the back side of it is on on the rear side of the house is where the operation was to try and find Chris. Because Jerry was out relatively quick after the second collapse because he was near the back door.
Yeah, correct.
These are probably get more into it, but Artie ends up coming in at the back, so that added another element to it.
Artie
through the rear of the structure.
As we continue to search towards the front through all this debris, sometime between, I remember seeing somebody going back up the ladder that's inside the front door from the back when we were searching. I saw a flashlight going up. I believe that to be one of the guys that was helping Artie, who had run out of air. I started making my way that direction, and Artie popped up in front of me. She was on the other side of either one of the refrigerators or that freezer. I'm not sure. It was the refrigerator or freezer. She appeared in front of me, was conscious enough to recognize it was me and call me by name and tell me to get the F out of here. Help me get the F out of here.
This was, you were making your way into the basement?
Yeah, I'm in the basement. I'm about halfway across the house. I'm basically somewhere in the mix of where the middle of the house was.
And she saw you.
She popped up. I don't know if she saw me as much as she was trying to find a way out. She crawled up on the refrigerator or freezer that was laying on its side. Just to give you, because this kind of plays into it in a minute, to give you a perspective about how much debris and stuff is laying down there. When I say popped up, like part of the refrigerator and the freezer is so high that there's only, at one point, it's probably only 12 to 18 inches between the freezer refrigerator laying on its side and the beam that runs crossways across the house. That's kind of how I know we were right in the middle, because that beam was there. At which point there were two members from the Mill Creek Fire Company who had been sent on mutual aid shortly thereafter that were smaller than me. I'm not the skinniest individual in the world. And I asked them, I said, look, you guys got to get over that refrigerator and drive her over to me. I don't fit in that space, or I didn't think I would with an air pack on. And they went over the refrigerator freezer and were able to basically pick her up with me pulling, and were able to push her over top of the refrigerator onto the back side of it. At which point we were able to deploy her drag device. And then as we got up the turn to the rear, just to give you some time frame, I now ran out of air. My mask sucked to my face, but we were only 7-8 feet inside the house, well, maybe a little more now, probably about 10-12 feet at that point. And we were able to drag her out the rear where she was turned over to EMS.
So she was talking up until that point?
Yes.
Wow. Brad, back to you. You are out in the front now. EMS is working on you.
Yeah, I was initially put on the front lawn so they could remove my gear. They didn't know the extent of my burns at this point, and when they took off the gear, it was they became quickly aware of how bad the burns were. So I was moved to the by the street where EMS, the paramedics and all took over, and had to get me to the front of the neighborhood just due to the congestion of fire apparatus. They couldn't get anybody anywhere close. So
no, I can imagine. I can definitely imagine that. What were your injuries?
I had I wish my wife was here to specifically go. She's a nurse and knew everything. I had third degree to fourth degree in both arms, my hands. Second, third degree on legs, third, fourth in my knee or like right leg ish area. And then burns to the upper part of my head, just like first, second degree on my head. The main damage was both my arms and my right leg. And then I had burns on both ankles that were, that needed repair.
Yeah, I mean, so that makes sense if you're falling into the fire. Now, again, I mean, those were horrible injuries. But it sounds like, I mean, the good gear that you were probably wearing saved a lot of that.
Yeah, I don't know if we had the best spec gear. I was actually not wearing so we have two sets of gear. The newer spec that we had, I wouldn't have called the greatest gear. I would have called it much less. I was wearing the older set, my secondary set, because my first set was needed to be cleaned and all. And I was more favorable of the other set just because I thought it was a better spec. So yeah, that set I would say was very useful or very helpful in that situation.
So you were taken away to the hospital. How long was your stay in the hospital?
43 days in the ICU.
43 days?
Yeah, I ended up having 11 or 12 graft surgeries. I did a portion of them were after I was released, but yeah, 43 days in the ICU.
43 days. Yeah, and that was. Have you been back to the fire department?
I made an attempt to come back after my rehab. I attempted to come back and was back for an academy and helped out with that. And then I was told I had to medically retire. So in 2018, July or June or July 2018, I retired from the fire department.
I can say that you're doing us a big favor today. I mean, this is going to go a long way to helping other firefighters.
Yeah, and I mean that's the hopefully the goal is to I can tell you that within my training, I learned a lot from looking at previous incidents and trying to learn from them and exactly what this is doing. Hopefully it gets out to somebody and they can say, we can learn from this. They did this. Well, maybe we should think about this. I do believe that a lot of the lack of injury, I had a lot of injuries, but I could have had so much more. And I do relate it to the training that I received over the years. My volunteer fire company, gave me a lot of great training and set me up, and just the case studies and, the NIOSH reports and all that, I was able to cut down my breathing. I was able to curl myself up and realize that as long as I extended this period of time without, my mask failing and causing more damage to my body, my gear was hopefully going to hold up. And that all came from just years of trying to learn. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That learning from what other people have had happen to them. And this is what Mayday Mondays is all about. So we have you out. You're getting tended to. Back around to the back. Caesar, you say that you guys were able to get Artie out, and now
Yeah.
How long was that after the collapse? Do you know?
No, I don't. I mean, I said I ran out of air. I'm a bigger guy, so I probably breathe more air than most, but I did have my mask off in the period of time between, being out front, asking the chief to call the Mayday, getting back out back, and then, masking up and pushing in. So I don't know for sure. I want to say probably upwards of 30 minutes to get Artie out, but I don't know that to be sure. As most people will tell you involved in high stress incidents, time some things seems like they take forever. Some things seem like they took seconds and it was really forever. So I want to say it's about 30 minutes, but I don't know that for sure. But when we got Artie out, Chris was still missing, and there was still an all-out effort searching for him. There was, unfortunately, the information that he was right inside the door, that they had removed him that far back, at least wasn't known to me and some other people initially. We kind of thought at that point that he was still to the front because that's the last place he was seen. But when he was found after we called for an all stop, and we basically shut everything down. And then you could hear one of the mutual aid chiefs actually heard a muffled pass alarm going off in the rear. And then they began to dig at a pile that was, Chris was buried deep enough that, lying there with a bottle on was not distinguishable that it was a fireman. He was buried that deep, and it took 5 or 10 minutes to get a lot of the debris off of him after we heard it.
All right. So you say it was 30 plus minutes to get Artie out. And then Chris was in the debris, in the rubble. Was it an hour before?
I honestly don't know. That's the one question I don't know. I wish I had an answer. I just don't.
So at any rate, he had been down too long, and his injuries were such that he succumbed to his injuries.
Correct. It had been an extended period of time, and he had passed at that point when we removed him. Artie
was removed and spent a month and a half or more into the hospital.
She passed away on December 1st.
December 1st. And again, she much like her life, right? She was a fighter. She fought valiantly, and then December 1st of 2016, she succumbed to her injuries.
Correct.
Brad had the opportunity while he was in the hospital to, be very close with that. His dad and family were really close with that family the whole time. Unlike all the firefighters there, but they had a special bond that was going on. And Brad, I heard stories before, and it's a pretty heart-wrenching story. So
yeah, we were at certain points in rooms next to each other. I was able to see her from time to time, but being in the ICU, it's a very locked down area. So family really couldn't get back, but every so often, actually they weren't really allowed in the back at all. So it was good to see, her when I could, but I was still, going through surgeries and stuff.
So was the fire was pretty much contained to the original fire building? Did it spread to either exposures?
No, it didn't spread to either exposure.
That is an amazing thing about those construction, right? That they get so much volume of fire and then they don't spread.
Yeah, unless it gets into the cockloft area or something like that, and some of them row homes, it's pretty traditionally Wilmington Fire is room and contents in them buildings, in and out, and going home. I mean, they make a numerous amount of like kitchen and bedroom fires, and 2 engines and a ladder. That's all they use. So.
Nope, I hear you. So what did Wilmington? Obviously, this was a big incident, a big life changer for the Wilmington Fire Department. What was initially any changes happened after that? training that was conducted after the fire to address any of the concerns here?
I'd have to say initially they took the option of the stick your head in the sand option. The chief at that time, who wasn't going to be chief for that long after, they were approached, to my knowledge, to do a study related to that fire, and they chose not to do it. And also, to my knowledge, they never really came out with anything. They, to this day, really haven't had a after action report. Caesar, I don't know if they've done it in the last year or two. I know the current chief is very much proactive with trying to learn as much as he can from this, and the chief prior to that was, trying to do what he could. So Caesar would probably be able to tell you more. I know they came out with some, basement SOP, and have done varying self-survival training. But I'm just speaking for the initial right after the fire. I don't know if Caesar, you want to tell me more?
Initially, I don't disagree with what Brad said. We have come out. The current chief, John Looney, is this is coming up on 5 years, and he is definitely trying to make sure that everyone that can learn something for this does. They're taking a deeper dive into what's going on. In the years in between, there was some people that would prefer to put their head in the sand and pretend like this never happened, or that this was a phenomenon and not going to happen to anybody else. But we have come out, with a basement SOP. We do a lot of training on self-survival, especially we're a very young department. Since this event, I would say the turnover is probably upwards of 40 to 50% of the department has changed. We just brought on a class of 25, I believe. That was the final number. When you're a smaller department and you're a 156 person department, that's a significant change. So I think the mentality is changing. Prior to this, as Jack said, we were in and out of these row homes hundreds of times, and occasionally something would happen, but typically nothing to this magnitude. And there was the mindset, right or wrong, there was the mindset of we're Wilmington and we'll operate by going in the front door all the time. And that mentality of always and never causes major problems. It sets things in motion, whether well intended or not. When you say we always do this or we always do that, you're setting yourself up for failure at some point. And, on this night, it cost us because the mentality, like I said, was we're Wilmington and we always go in the front door. And I think Jack was around longer than I was. Would probably attest to that was the mentality.
It was the mentality of the Wilmington Fire Department. The attitude of the Wilmington Fire Department was we were a strong, interior, aggressive fire department, and most of our structures were that structure. That's what we were running on. We've had a lot of close calls. We've had a lot of bad leadership. We've had a lot of bad incident command. Things are changing. We had, like I said, we had several large high-rise fires where we didn't do very well on, and we stuck our head in the sand and not said, hey, we're going to have an after action and talk about this, or share the lessons that we learned from the fires with all the shifts. And it became a culture of, just continue to get off the truck, take the line in the door, and put the fire out without, what happened with the B platoon? How come that firefighter got hurt? And the A platoon didn't know, or the C. There's sometimes you could have a whole fire between a shift and the other shift didn't even know what anybody got hurt or injured or anything like that. It's the change had to stop. There had to be a culture change, and from that old school. Not that I said that everything was bad, when I was learning from guys from the 60s and the 70s, and and when Caesar and Brad got on, they're learning from guys like me from the 80s, from the early 90s, early 80s. It's like, so now these young guys are learning from guys. They're, like I said, my son's on the job and he's acting in a company. He's only got 7 years on the job. He's whole company's younger than him.
Well, and that's why it's so important, right, to pass it on, is because the fire duty now is less than it was when you were there and Caesar started and Brad started. So if we don't pass that on, then they're not going to know anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the small culture. And I mean, our structures in Wilmington are no different than Baltimore or Trenton or Camden or Philadelphia. Anything on this Mid-Atlantic region, even DC probably has the same type of structures. Yeah, it's all built the same. And we realize it. It's like, I've been in these buildings 1,000 times. I know where the stairs are. I know where this is. But for that few seconds where Brad and them felt that floor give, I've been in situations where that happened, but it never to the magnitude of that, losing, firefighters that way.
No, and I think that's the other issue, right? Is that the fire doesn't know how good you are at fighting row house fires.
Absolutely not.
Right. And they don't, the fire didn't know how you did on last week's fire. Right. So this is a new fire and we have to kind of plan for the worst, hope for the best. Right. And things like that when it comes to all of our fires. And while we have great success in operating at those, there's going to be one that's not going to be. So I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about this. I know it's tough when we talk about people that we've lost. What I like to do with these Maydays when I get some people that have come on here is, again, can you give me 2 or 3 things that you think that someone should learn from this incident? And I think that you guys, Caesar and Brad, while you were on the same area, right? You came on the same rig. You probably have different things that you want people to take out of this. Jack, even you from your coming in and helping, if you would give our viewers a couple of things that you think really come out of this fire, this incident, that you think can help them.
I'll start because I'll let these guys talk. They would make the fire. I think things that as an incident or a company officer really has to make sure that they maintain is crew integrity and size up capabilities. Even though you may know the structure, like the ins and outs of it, you have to be able to size it up. And then if something catastrophic happens, you got to be able to make changes on the fly to, get your people. We understand that we can do everything right and still die at this job. We understand that. But the problem is that with that size up. The other thing is that I was very passionate after this, is just learning firefighter survival, learning things Brad did. And Brad and I go way back. We've trained together and really hard, and Caesar, and I can name the guys that, real close to me. But the just saying that, understanding. And like I said, I was real passionate when we started the Mayday process here in Delaware and made a statewide thing and tried to, I still push it today on the state level. And most of the fire departments and, stuff like that, getting it out to make sure they understand that we have a procedure and a policy and how to use your radio properly, how to make sure you're geared up properly, making sure you understand what your SCBA is. I just think that these things could happen at a blink of your eye, and you got to be able to have all that stuff in your memory to pull up as fast as you can to save your life. But there's always that, slim chance that it's not going to work, but you got to have to be able to, fight and get yourself out. So they're just my takeaways: size up, crew integrity, and understanding firefighter survival.
That's good stuff. Size up, crew integrity, understanding firefighter survival. I think that's something that sounds like Mayday Monday, and I really appreciate you helping me find some guys who would talk about this.
I love these two guys, man. I do. I tell you what, guys I grew up in the volunteer fire service. There are a couple of these are 2 of the guys, but there's quite a few other. But there's a lot of guys in the Wilmington fire, guys and girls in the Wilmington Fire Department I love to death. To this day, I'd do anything for them. I don't know a lot of the new faces, but I see them come to the academy here, whatever. But the ones that I worked with, they know how passionate I got on the job about stuff, whether they liked me or not. That wasn't a part of it. It was about me making sure that people go home at the end of the day. So
I know, Jack. Sounds good. Thank you. Caesar, Brad?
Yeah, I'll just touch on something real quick. Something that I've tried to just talk about a little bit. As far as gear, I was a big person that I wasn't always the best with utilizing my gear to its fullest. As far as strapping the neck strap, putting the chin strap on, Borks down, well, whatever it may be. That night, for some reason, I had an extra minute. Like we've talked about the culture in Wilmington, like we can go in and we can make a quick knock and be in and out in 10 minutes. Have a couple rooms put down. Something about that night, I knew that the fire was going to be more than what it was. So I took the time and did all that. And I can say that, I've freely admitted that not being one of those guys. Now, I wore my gear, I wore my hood, I wore everything. I wasn't a guy that wasn't going to wear a hood in, but, I took that extra time, which is 10 or 15 seconds. And I do think that along with the other stuff, ultimately helped as far as, keeping me alive longer. And I just couldn't reiterate it enough to, just know your gear and, and to delve off into, like I talked about the breathing rate and knowing your gear. And I was able to recognize that the situation was bad and tucking in a ball because I knew that my face piece was going to fail quickly. If my arms and my gear was already failing on my arms and my hands, I knew that the face piece at the 400 degrees or whatever the failure rate is, it was coming close, and as long as I could protect it and, keep that safe, I could give those guys time to do whatever they had to do to get to me. So just knowing your gear in and out and, taking that extra second to wear it properly because, like we said, like it can happen in an instant. We should have been able to go in there and knock this down, but there was other extenuating circumstances that ultimately, weren't going to allow that to happen.
I think that what you said kind of builds on what Jack said too, right? When he said about the firefighter survival training, that when you talk about rolling up in a ball, I remember doing that in the class, and you're thinking, when am I ever going to use this, right? But fortunately, you did that, and you remembered it, and you brought it back, and it helped you, and so as much as we think these things are trivial or weird things that the people want us to go through for survival training, there's a reason why these things are there. Is that there's a reason why we're doing these things, and it's useful stuff. So thank you for bringing that out and talking about that because it is important. Caesar.
Yeah, I have two things. One of them is training, and I've, like I said, I've been to classes with Jack and I've been to classes with Brad. When you go out there and you have got to take these training classes and you have to take them seriously, but you have got to take these classes that drive you to the edge, drive you to your breaking point. So you know where that is and how to control your breathing, how to control, your actions, where, you read on combat or something like that, where you're going to slide off the cliff, are you going to be able to function? Fortunately for me, I've been to those classes. I mentioned one earlier that we went to together. The one that I credit the most is the one Jack and I took in Fairfax, where it drove me to the breaking point. I literally
drove me to the breaking point. Before he goes any further, I just had to shout out to Scott Kraut and Rob Lassetti and them guys in Fairfax County with their stress inoculation program. Thumbs up, man. It's the real deal.
So, continue your training. And the other thing that I'll say, from, Lieutenant Denizio, you have to be prepared to make decisions, whether you're a firefighter or an officer, because your officer is not always going to be with you, if something happens to your officer. Or you're in a position where, you're the outside vent, you're in the rear. You have got to be willing to make decisions. Am I going to make this situation better by my actions? Am I going to make it worse? Do people know where I am? What's my air supply? If I go down there with low air and now I become part of the problem, there were a lot of guys that made a lot of great decisions that night. And, people may disagree with their decision that night or, say, oh, you could have done this better. But you have got to be ready to make decisions when you're getting off that truck. And, the consequences of those decisions, you have to be willing to live with them. That I don't know if I'm really getting my point across, but, this is not you're just going to tell me what to do. You've got to train yourself to be ready to make decisions. And like you said, when am I ever going to need this? You don't know. It could be tonight. It could be tomorrow night. Last thing I'll say is that night, I often call that night, it was a great night till it wasn't. Because Brad will tell you, we laughed hysterically all night, mainly because we were abusing Chris because his favorite high school got beat in football. We kept calling him all night. But at the end of the day, your Super Bowl in life, you don't get to pick your Super Bowl. Could be your next run. Could be your first one. So train, and be ready to make decisions. Listen to what other people have to say.
No, I think I'm with you, and right, we do so many things automatically that like we've talked about here. You went to this row house fire that you've done so many times. Well, when it's not the same, you have to be ready to make a decision and do something different. And this one was a little different. Again, perhaps our SOGs or our plans. The fire doesn't know our plans and our SOGs, so we have to be ready to be able to kind of make a decision and do the right thing. No, I think you guys are really gave us some great stuff today. I appreciate you coming on. Let me share my screen again before we leave. A couple of things I want to add here to it. This is who we're talking about. Jerry, Chris, and Artie. Ultimate sacrifice they made, and now we are here to honor them by learning from this incident and taking it from it and training so that we're better prepared. Here's one thing that we kind of heard these guys talk about, air management. Now, there was definitely something that happened here in this fire, whether it was a mask got knocked off during the collapse. But look how quickly their air was exhausted from their cylinder. This is Chris's data logger from his SCBA, and you can see that at some point something catastrophic happened and his air went out. But we do know that if you listen to these guys talk about their survival training, one of the things they mentioned was controlling your breathing, knowing how long your air pack's going to last. Do you have enough air? Well, that's what we're going to do this month is do we have enough air? So we're going to practice. We're going to work on this air management stuff. Typically, our SCBA is rated for 40 liters per minute breathing rate. If you take a 45-minute cylinder, that volume of air in that is 1,800 liters of air. If I test it to 40 liters per minute, which is where the NFPA comes up with their 45 minutes of a cylinder, then that's great. If you breathe at 40 liters per minute, then you'll make that thing last. But at some point, you're probably going to meet a fire where you're breathing 100, 110 liters per minute, and you'll exhaust that SCBA pretty quick. So we need to be really good at controlling our breathing, especially when we get into stressful environments. You heard these guys Brad talk about controlling his breathing when he fell into the hole and his life was in front of him. He was able to get his wits and control his breathing, and think about that. You listen to Jack talk about the training at the speed of flashover that these guys from Fairfax, Scott Kraut and Lassetti are doing, where they're doing some stress inoculation stuff. That's what we're talking about here, is can you control your breathing when it's the time to control your breathing? Here's a quick drill you can go out and do. You get on the treadmill so you can see how you can control your breathing. Make that thing last for a while. Get out and play some basketball. We did that one time, and you'd be surprised at how quick or even how long your air will last when you get into your low air supply, if you can control your breathing. Right. So get out there and practice this stuff. See these things so you know when the stress does come, how you can get the most out of your SCBA. These are just some of the things we're doing here. These guys came on, again, Wilmington, Delaware. You guys got a pretty solid fire department up there. It sounds like you guys are still strong. Thanks, Caesar, for coming on. I hope you guys are strong there at the engine 1, right? You're still at 1?
Yeah, still at 1.
Best company in the
Brad,
city.
Brad, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Jack, it's always good to see you.
Just one more thing, Tony, just one more thing. On September 24th of this year at 1 o'clock, they made a memorial park out of that area that was tore down. The Chief Looney has invited people at 1 o'clock. They're going to have a memorial service, or a service there, I should say, along with the Wilmington Benevolent Firefighters Association and Local 1590 and Chief Looney. They're going to have a service, 5-year service there. They put benches and bricks, and it's supposed to be a beautiful little area that was turned over to the firefighters to keep them alive, the memory of those 3 firefighters alive.
All right, that's going to be September 24th, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you said, right?
Yeah, that's on the Wilmington Fire Department's Facebook page, and also I think Local 1590 Wilmington Firefighters is also.
Good work. Speaking of things to come, all you ISFSI members, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we have a happy hour. We'll be talking about this very thing, learning from the past, how to work LODDs and stuff like this into your training. I got Joe Pronesti, Billy Goldfeder, Gordon Graham, and myself will be on there. Some big guys there that'll come on, and it's great. I've never been on a thing with Gordon Graham. I can't wait. I watch him on his shows and stuff, but to be on that with him. So please come out if you're a member. Again, tomorrow, sign up. See you there. Mayday Monday for September, in honor of Jerry, Chris, and Artie. Thank you, Wilmington, Delaware, for coming on. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.